welcome back to Going to Ground, out of doors again and in a familiar setting, for me at least, over in Avebury, not far from my home, and in the distance there behind me, the three burial mounds crested with beech trees, whose silhouette makes such a striking scene against the evening sky. I'm here with Effie, the Portuguese water dog, and we've come out for an evening stroll at the end of the day's work. Behind me, can you see there's one of the Avebury stones in the Stone Avenue? It's a bit small in the camera, but the stones are behind me. The burial mounds are before me. And I am betwixt them both, musing on a busy week, but a good one actually this week, when I had a little time to read. I haven't been reading as much as I long to, but I caught up a little bit this week amidst appointments with the writings of C.H. Sisson, who is a wonderfully irascible Anglican writer who died about 30 years ago. He's interesting in being an accomplished poet, and not very well known actually still. And he was a layman. He was a senior civil servant in government until the 70s, and wrote very strongly about the decline of the use of the prayer book. But whilst he can come across at times pretty grumpily, I think he's fabulous. He's a writer of incredible precision in his choice of words, as you'd expect with a poet. And he, in his collection, Is There a Church of England? It's a collection of essays published by a non-religious publisher, which is one of the reasons I like it, by Carcanet, the poetry publisher, of describing all manner of things, but exploring his roots into faith through place and through what Anglicans or Christians call the liturgy, which is the form of prayers that we use. And in one of, and there's a collection of some of his poems at the back of this book. I picked it up for a couple of quid on Abe Books, which is the best place for second-hand books online. And in one of these poems, which I hadn't come across before, he has a couple of lovely lines just to share with you while I'm out on this stroll, one of which is, Christ is the language we use to talk to God. Christ is the language we use to talk to God. One could unpack that more, but it's just a wonderfully fertile image that we might reverse it and say, in faith, that Christ is the language that God uses to talk to us, i.e. a human interaction. And then there was another line about the events of Easter, which in Lent we're preparing for, of course, and beginning to think about the cross and the resurrection in these days of these weeks of Lent. And so in one of these, he slightly flippantly, but it's a poetic device, sort of describes that the death and resurrection of Christ is not the thing that astounds him most. What is most remarkable is that he ever came here at all, which is looking back to the incarnation at the birth of Christ in Christmas and the good news the church shares at Epiphany. But it's sort of moving between the poles of Christmas and Easter, this poem, which is where we are. It's just a small poem, but it's the last line of it that really struck me. I think the preceding line, I didn't bring it with me, is something like the surprising thing being that he came to earth where no one ever came voluntarily before. That's the line that really struck me, where no one ever came voluntarily before. And in those few words is the power of the truth that we're born into this life. We all just arrive here. We're all impelled onto the earth without any say in the matter whatsoever. It's an obvious thing in one respect, really simple observation, but Sisson homes in on this, the fact of Christ in the Christian narrative anyway, having been chosen to come, that it was a voluntary self-emptying of God to come to us in the language we understand, in the form we understand. It was the choice where no one ever came voluntarily before. It suggests to me intention, desire, purpose, connection, which is not first of all down to us, but to God's outstretched hand to us. It's an act of faith, of course, article of faith, so to speak, to choose to see the world that way. And Sisson, who's a very erudite scholar and poet, calls it a tall story. He says the incarnation's a tall story. But if you choose to see the world that way and to take it at face value, then so much else follows. Anyway, thoughts to chew on as I press up towards the ever nearer burial ground, if you will get there first. So wherever you are today, friends, God bless you as you go to ground.